I think we often forget about the small town. But these places have incredible people and stories and histories as well. I wanted to document these places, help them tell their stories. To do this, I traveled to a nearby town of 1,000 people in central Alaska known as Salcha. Enjoy these interviews, these memories, these stories from Salcha.
So anytime you go around the museum and you see things that have a red background, those are all kid researched. And then we also have some items that are kid made. The dredge, the sluice box, a model of the Cade homestead, those kinds of things are things that students have actually made. I want to talk a little bit about the history of Salcha. I'm going to start over here with the Salchakit Band. And the Salchakit Band is the native group that was here. Very migratory. They moved all the way up towards like where Fort Yukon is, down to Valdez, out towards the Canadian border, all over the place as they were trying to gather fish and caribou and moose to feed their families. This right up here, this is a calendar of the typical months, and for example, January is called the Little Longer Days month, and this is the name in Salchakit, and I could not pronounce that for you. Salchakit, that is a traditional word. It means mouth of the Salcha River. In the beginning days of this area, as far as the different white settlers coming in and trappers and miners, and with the development of Fairbanks, we also had the development of the Salchakit village. And one of the things that was there was St. Luke's Mission. And St. Luke's Mission was run by Miss Whiteman. So it opened in 1910 and was here until about 1920. And one of the things she did was she encouraged them to make a garden and plant potatoes. And they ended up getting just tons and tons of potatoes that was helping. But she also helped with the band when there was illnesses. A lot of the band was basically killed by illness. A lot of the band ended up later on scattering and joining the Healy Lake Band or the Good Pasture Band. And so today the only Salchakit who lives in the area is Cecilia Balsh. She also married Pete Balsh, who was the brother of Joe Balsh, who started the Salcha store. And they have a farm that's over down by the school, and they were known, I remember when I first moved to Salcha, they were known for their gardening, outstanding gardening. I want to talk a little bit about this map right here. This was a map that was done with James Carey, who was a linguist up at the university at the Alaska Native Language Center. And he came out to the school and worked with the kids, and these are all the traditional names of the Salcha area. And another project that the kids did was Jonathan David, who was an elder from Minto, came out and talked about the fish traps that are very unique for Salcha. And so, and then he made that fish trap with the kids. And we have pictures here. This is all of Cecilia's family members and her mom and her sisters, and pictures of her husband's family. And then something else about that time was the Munson's Roadhouse. And so Munson's Roadhouse was right there at the Salcha village, and the old Valdez Trail, which at that time they always called it like the big trail, that was the main way into the interior. You know, we didn't have Parks Highway. Fairbanks was very young in the early, this was around 1900 and things. And so, so Munson's was a major stopping point along the way. There was roadhouses about every 20 miles. And then people would travel for 20 miles, whether they were on the old Valdez, whether they came by stage, whether they were walking, came by horse-drawn. And there's even stories of people coming along the old Valdez Trail on bikes, which I can't imagine doing a bike even in the wintertime or down the Yukon River by bike. And so they would stop and they would stay at these roadhouses, and some were really nice and had fresh food, and others was just, you know, spruce bough kind of bed and not really great, but it was shelter. And so Munson Slough also had the post office, and the telegraph station was here, and so that was there until about 1925 when it burnt down. And so that has a really fun history. One of the things that I find really interesting is the telegraph station. So the telegraph station was just instrumental in opening up Alaska. Prior to the telegraph station, there wasn't a lot of ways to communicate. You know, you could send by mail, but it might take months and months or even years to get something. So the telegraph station, so they decided that they were going to do a telegraph station, and actually they were trying to go all the way to Europe. And so there was a group trying to get the telegraph station to go across the Atlantic, the transatlantic telegraph. And then there was another one trying to go overland all the way through Russia. The one from the ocean ended up being created first, but we still had this telegraph line that was through Alaska. And so they ended up finishing that. And on June 20th, 1903, the telegraph line was actually connected at the Salcha River. And so that provided a means of communication from Nome all the way like to Washington, D.C., New York. So I think that's really neat in our history, that it's kind of like the golden spike on a railroad. That Salcha River is where they connected that line. So I think that is just really interesting. The lines, a lot of times, were just laid out on the ground so it would break. Or it was laid on, there's some pictures up here of just a tripod and it would break. And so the guys in the Signal Corps would have to go out in the middle of the winter even and go try to find where the break was and to fix it. And so it was really harsh, and they lived in, you know, pretty remote areas all up and down. And we have pictures from Bob Lovelace and how he was a racer in the North American and was really involved with dog racing, and he has some really fun stories about that. And Louis Dorr lived up on the when you go around the bends up, he had a house kind of up in the hills, and it was dug into the hills. So he had his house, part of it was like a cave, and then he would he dug out of the dirt like little shelves and things. Bob Lovelace talked about seeing Dorr drive down, he would drive his sled down the middle of the road at that time, and he would spend, you know, maybe 6 weeks, a month, whatever, up the Salcha River and trapping and hunting and stuff. And so there was a lot of dog mushing that was going on at that time. So there's just fantastic stories, and so that's one of the things the Historical Society Museum is doing, is we're trying to document all that. Salcha and the Richardson Highway has a huge mining history. And one of the cool things is, and a lot of people don't know about it, is Felix Pedro, who everyone knows in association with Fairbanks, but they don't know that he actually came into the Salcha country first and found gold up the Salcha River at 98 Mile Creek, and has some gold claims up there. And then he also, there's kind of a story about how he found this rich gold vein and then kind of lost where it was, and it became the lost gold mine of the Upper Tanana. And there's many of us in our historical society believe that's probably where Pogo Mine is now. So it's kind of fun to have that connection with Felix Pedro. And so here's a picture of the early school, and it was just long and narrow. And then later on, in 85, 86, the rest of the school was built on, and then just recently we've had the little addition of the walkway. So one of the important teachers that have really impacted the school and the community was Jean and Daryl Coe. And they, Daryl had been a park ranger before becoming a teacher. And so he and his wife came and they taught at school, and he introduced skiing to the community. And so he was in charge. He helped. We've got pictures of the kids in the community building the ski trails. And so all of the ski trails that are out here that are basically world-class ski trails were developed by the community with hard work, by hand and tools and things. And so they started the ski club in the 70s, and they've been tryouts for the Junior Olympics. We've had the Olympic people have trained out here. We've had the World Ski Juring Championship out on the ski trails. And the other thing that the Coe started was the 6-mile run. At first it was like 4th to 6th grade, and then later first graders on down could run it. And so this race was started in 1975, and it was a way to kind of augment the cross-country training. So the kids ran from Harding Lake to the school, and it was on the last day of school. So, and it was a huge deal. The community come out all along the highway and cheer on the kids racing. And so that went on for many years until 2003. And then it became too dangerous on the road for the kids. And so the 6-mile run stopped, and it wasn't until 2014 that we began a new race that's also held on the last day of school, but it's called the Salcha 5K Challenge. And it's called a challenge because we never know how the ski trails are going to be. They can be muddy, snowy, whatever. And so the kids run 5K. So our school is really unique out here for Salcha and actually for the country, because we are the only school that has a competitive race on the last day of school, when most kids are just, school's out, picnic, go out. Our kids are running, whether they ran 6 miles or 5K now. So I think that's really special, and there's a huge running tradition. Besides running in the spring, their kids run in the fall, and a lot of our runners from Salcha, from our community, have gone on to run high school, be state champions, gone on to run college. So we have some really good athletes that come from our school. Tom Neville played football. He grew up out here. We have kids that do dog mushing. A lot of kids racing. So, and then we have, of course, the Harding Lake history, and that in itself is so unique. Harding Lake has always been really important for a recreational area. A lot of Fairbanks used to come out, and when they first started doing like the oldest cabin that's still in existence is 1925. That's still there. And so families would come out and boating and have fun and enjoy recreation. But then also the water was also an important source of water for families, and then for some of the early roadhouses too. Salcha has so many things that make it special for a community, and so that's why I just get so excited about our history.